OM TG-7 is waterproof. It's freeze-proof.
It's tough. It's really tough.
It's dust-proof. It's shock-proof. It's crush-proof.
It's tough.
But is it tough enough to take on a phone camera? How does it do for street photography, underwater photography, everyday photography? Does this camera have what it takes? Now, this video is not going to go into boring tech specs about the camera. There are tons of videos on the TG-7 about that. We're going to go into the most important features of this camera that you should know about. Then we'll dive right in, no pun intended, with some tough shooting situations, now that pun was intended, to see what this camera is really made of. So is the TG-7 an action camera? Well, in a way it is, because it's rugged, it can be dropped, it can be subject to the elements. But it has a very different form factor than, let's say, a GoPro, which is smaller and more like a box. Now, the GoPro, however, does not have a zoom. This camera has a 4x zoom, and it's an optical quality zoom. A lot of the zooms in phones are digital, which means they're not as clear. And there are a lot of accessories you can get for this camera to really make it a fun camera. Now, the camera doesn't come with a lens cap per se. There is glass protecting the lens element. I invested in about $7 in this little rubberized lens cap, just in case you throw the camera in a bag, you don't want to get anything scratched up. Now, there is an automatic opening lens cap that OM Systems sells. It's a little pricey. There's also an aftermarket brand, but just, just to have a little extra protection. Now, speaking of protection, realize if you're going to take this underwater, you have to make sure that all the doors are properly locked. There's a two-part process in locking the bottom door. Make sure that you do that, because if you don't, and you get this camera, the internals wet, you're toast. Now, the sensor in the camera is small, like the size of a cell phone, or even smaller than some cell phones now. But OM Systems was smart in putting in a 12 megapixel sensor in this camera. Now, you may say 12 megapixels, I got a lot more in other cameras. But the decision to do that was to help low light performance. And in addition to that, there's a fast aperture of f2.0 on the wide end. So these specs make a lot of sense, because when you go underwater, things tend to get dark. If you're out in the rain, it's cloudy, you don't have a lot of light. This camera boasts 4K 30 video, whereas a lot of the competitors only have 1080p. Here we are in 4K underwater with a mermaid. You're going to see more examples of video in this video. Here we see 1080p video. It still looks good. A little bit of focus hunting in and out, you're going to get that at times, but the camera has in-body image stabilization. This is at full zoom. You can see it looks really steady. Here's a nice wide angle of a video game expo. Here it is in telephoto, nice and steady in 1080p. Now, the camera has a lot of cool modes. They call this microscope, which is actually a macro mode. You can get as close as 1 centimeter from the lens. It also has focus stacking, which is great for macro shots. I tried it out here. This is a Halloween decoration. I got right up close to these scary guys. Built-in flash, which doubles as a video light. Uses a single SD card, only weighs 249 grams, 120 frames per second slow-mo, 20 frames per second continuous shooting. Wait, does that say GPS? It shoots RAW, and there are many scene modes, including, a construction mode.
Good. I bought a bunch of fresh donuts for my construction workers.
Not cheap at over $500, available in 2 colors. The black is more expensive, maybe because it's more rare, I think. Or is it because
once you go black, you don't come back?
Listen, I promise I won't do any more corny jokes. All you have to do is give this video a like, and do consider subscribing. And I think you're going to like what's coming up next, because now I'm actually going to show you many examples of this camera in different shooting situations where you're most probably going to use it. First, I took it to the Long Island Aquarium to simulate marine situation underwater. This is one of the most popular uses for this camera. It's also a very nice, small, discreet camera, and I think really appropriate for street photography. So I took this to the streets of New York City. I have a whole section on that. How does it do compared to a phone? You're going to see direct side-by-side comparisons to an iPhone 17 Pro. What about for birding? And as an everyday camera, just to walk around, to use this as your main camera. Stay tuned, don't touch that dial, we're gonna get started. Now, one of the first things I noticed off the bat is the brightness of the colors, and things just don't look washed out. Now, there is a special underwater mode, which I did not engage. I didn't feel a need to. I really like to see the actual colors that I'm seeing and not have the tint change. Here I submerged it. The water was a bit murky here. For the first time I submerged it, it feels kind of strange putting your camera underwater. So I took it out quickly just to check it, and it was fine. Really nice colors. I think having 4K as opposed to 1080p really brings out the detail. And this is one of the few cameras that gives you 4K in video and makes it easier to see the detail on the mermaid. And having sound too adds to the effect. Now obviously the rear screen does get wet. It's not a touch screen for that reason, but you still can control the zoom and even the focus as well if you want. Now I didn't go very deep with it in this case, not like scuba diving deep, although here is a shark. I wasn't in the water for this one. This one was through the tank, but nice detail in the eye and almost very Jaws-like. You can go down to 50 feet with this camera. And in that case, things are going to get even darker, which is why I think it was really smart for them to put a fast f2.0 lens in addition to only 12 megapixels. This way, when you take pictures, your shutter speed doesn't have to be that slow and you'll get less blurring. I noticed a lot of pictures were less blurry than when I tested a similar camera, a Kodak, which has a slower lens. And those pictures weren't quite as crisp and sharp as this one. And it's amazing, you know, if you were going to go down this deep with a regular camera, you would need a whole big underwater casing and housing. And this is so convenient to have this little camera with you to take shots like this. These photos by Martin Walsh show how street photography in the rain can be a very good look. And I tried it. I went out on a rainy New York City day with this little discreet TG-7. You definitely don't draw attention to yourself. You can set minimum shutter speed too, which is good for street. Now I like a tilting screen to be discreet. This doesn't have that. You can't tilt the screen. When you use the built-in flash in the rain, you get these circular reflections, which you may or may not like, but the flash does freeze the action and gives a nice look. Like here's no flash and here is with the flash. Fuji cameras have film simulations. OM System calls it Art Bracket, very similar, but it has raw in-camera editing. So here I changed this to black and white in camera. Yeah, I got this shot right at the right time. How about a stolen kiss? Or at least an attempted one. So you could still crop in even though there's only 12 megapixels on the sensor. Now normally most street photographers use like a fixed prime lens, but with a zoom lens like this, sometimes if you see the action across the street and you can't get there, the zoom comes in handy. Well, I enjoyed using the TG-7 in the rain, even though I got just a little wet. But fortunately, it doesn't have to be raining to use this as a street photography camera. You know, a lot of street photographers like the 28 and 35 millimeter focal length, and that's included in the 25 to 100 range. So you can choose any focal length you want, or you can use the zoom to change perspective. Having 2.5 stops of sensor shift image stabilization is helpful for walking the streets. The camera goes from f2 to 4.9, and you have aperture priority, shutter priority, and full manual mode if you want. This woman was left holding the bag, this man holding the dog, and she holding the little girl. And look at all the detail we could still see cropping in, and it's a cloudy day. The minimum shutter speed on the camera is 1/2000th of a second. ISO goes from 100 to 12,800.
Okay, nice pictures, but how does the TG-7 compare to the camera in your phone? I recently did a video like this, comparing an iPhone 17 Pro to a very popular digital point and shoot, the Sony RX100 Mark VII. I got a lot of passionate responses. Some people said that this was a sponsored ad for Sony, that I was a Sony fanboy, blah, 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 blah. Well, I can assure you that I'm not. I don't get paid by Sony or by Apple. So in this particular test, I'm just going to show you the two pictures side by side. I'm not going to interject anything. I'll let you make a decision so you can compare to see, now putting it in perspective, how this compares to an iPhone 17 Pro.
Now, the 4x zoom of the camera does make this eligible for a birding and wildlife type camera. We don't normally think of the TG-7 for that, but as you can see here, I did get some fairly decent shots of the ducks and birds in Central Park, and being able to use 4K video just adds to that detail and realism. I did have a little issue with the video. It seems that when I was shooting, it would stop like after 10 or 15 seconds. I'm not sure if it was the card. It's not really a repeatable problem. If anybody else has that problem with their camera, where the video would just like stop recording after like 10 seconds and you'd have to restart it again. Really good stabilization here. I mean, this is at full zoom hand holding. Okay, it can shoot wildlife, but how about people? How does it look to shoot your family, your friends, or some models here? And you can take a look and see that this little camera, I think, does a more than acceptable job. Now, it's not a professional camera. You're not going to get that dreamy background blur, but it picks up the colors very nicely. I was very pleasantly surprised how these pictures came out, some of the fall colors remaining in the city. Again, you're not going to get a lot of background separation. But as an everyday camera, due to the small size and weight, to walk around, if you're traveling, if you're on vacation, certainly easy enough to pack with you. You don't have to worry about it getting wet if you get caught in the rain. And even in low light, I'm going to show you some shots here at the museum. Some more zoom examples. You know, the aperture slows down when you zoom up, means it gets a little grainier, but you can see it's not that bad, especially if you're using the flash. You can get some nice shots from wide to zoom. It's also nice to be able to shoot 4K video, so you have both all in one, a video camera and a still camera and a camera that's protected against the elements. By the way, she's real. She's not a dummy. He's not real. But even so, he came out pretty good. And again, the light was low in these scenes. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned for more point and shoot videos. Whole big comparison video coming up. I appreciate your support. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.